Michael Jackson stood on a makeshift stage in a church basement, and what he was about to sing was going to break 200 hearts at once. A 6-year-old boy, about to perform his dead brother's favorite song. But wait, this wasn't a funeral. This was a community talent show. How was a grieving child even standing upright, let alone performing? December 12, 1964, Mount Zion Baptist Church, Gary, Indiana. The annual Christmas Talent Showcase was supposed to be a celebration, families gathering, children performing, holiday spirit filling the room. But everyone in that basement knew something was different this year. The Jackson family had lost someone, and nobody expected them to show up, let alone perform. But that wasn't even the most shocking part. The real story had started 4 months earlier, and what happened behind the scenes would change everything anyone thought they knew about grief, music, and the power of one small boy's voice. Let me tell you, August 3, 1964. Brandon Jackson was 8 years old, Michael's older brother, not from the famous Jackson 5. Brandon came before all of that, before the fame, before the records, before anyone knew the Jackson name. Brandon had cerebral palsy. He couldn't walk without assistance. He couldn't play sports like other kids. But he could sing. God, could that boy sing? Every morning, Katherine Jackson would find Brandon in the living room, practicing his favorite song. His Eye is on the Sparrow, an old gospel hymn. Simple melody, but the way Brandon sang it, with that pure, hopeful voice, it made grown adults cry. "Mama," Brandon would say, his words slow but determined. "When I sing, I'm not sick anymore. When I sing, I can do anything." Michael, just 6 years old, would sit on the floor and watch his brother practice, hour after hour, day after day. "Why do you sing that song so much?" Michael asked one morning. Brandon smiled. "Because it reminds me that even when things are hard, someone's watching over me, like the sparrow, small, fragile, but never forgotten." Michael didn't fully understand. He was 6, but he listened. He absorbed. He memorized every note, every breath, every pause his brother took. August 3, 1964. A Tuesday afternoon. Brandon was crossing Jackson Street with his mother. They were heading to his doctor's appointment. Katherine was holding his hand, helping him walk. The car came out of nowhere, a drunk driver, running a red light, 50 miles per hour in a residential zone. Katherine saw it first. She tried to pull Brandon back, but he was too slow. His body didn't respond fast enough. The impact was instant. Brandon died before the ambulance arrived. 8 years old, gone. The Jackson household went silent. Joe Jackson, who usually ran the house with strict discipline and loud commands, didn't speak for 3 days. Katherine cried until she had no tears left. Jackie, Tito, and Jermaine walked around like ghosts. And Michael? 6-year-old Michael sat in the corner of the room he'd shared with Brandon and didn't make a sound. At the funeral, the pastor asked if anyone wanted to share memories. Joe shook his head firmly. "Not the children. They're too young." But Katherine looked at Michael, his small face, his wide eyes, his silence. "Baby," she whispered. "Do you want to say something about Brandon?" Michael shook his head. He couldn't speak. The words wouldn't come. 3 weeks after Brandon's death, something strange happened. Katherine was in the kitchen late at night when she heard singing, quiet, fragile, coming from the boy's bedroom. She walked to the door and listened. Michael was sitting on Brandon's bed, singing "His Eye is on the Sparrow," the same way Brandon used to sing it, every note, every breath, every pause. Katherine's hands started shaking. She opened the door slowly. "Michael?" Michael stopped singing, looked up at his mother with tears in his eyes. "I don't want to forget how Brandon sounded," Michael whispered. "If I keep singing his song, it's like he's still here." Katherine sat down next to her youngest son and held him, and she cried. Not the hopeless tears she'd been crying for weeks. Different tears. Tears that felt like healing might be possible. November 1964. 3 months after Brandon's death, the Mount Zion Baptist Church announced their annual Christmas Talent Showcase. The Jackson family had performed at it every year. Joe was adamant they wouldn't go this year. "We're not ready," Joe said. "The boys aren't ready. We're staying home." But Michael, who had barely spoken since Brandon died, said something that changed everything. I want to sing Brandon's song. Joe looked at his 6-year-old son. Michael, that's not a good idea. You're too young. It's too emotional. I want to sing Brandon's song, Michael repeated, stronger this time. He should be there. If I sing it, he is there. Catherine put her hand on Joe's arm. Let him. Joe Jackson, the hardest man in Gary, Indiana, broke down. Okay, son, okay. For the next 4 weeks, Michael practiced His Eye is on the Sparrow every single day, but he wasn't just learning a song, he was keeping his brother alive. December 12, 1964, 7 p.m. The Jackson family arrived at Mount Zion Baptist Church. The basement was packed, 200 people, families, neighbors, church members. When the Jacksons walked in, the room went quiet. Everyone knew about Brandon. Everyone had been at the funeral, and everyone was shocked the family was even there. Mrs. Evelyn Porter, the organist who'd played at Brandon's funeral, saw Michael and started crying immediately. She leaned over to the pastor. That poor baby. He looked so small. Michael was wearing his Sunday best, a white shirt that Catherine had ironed 3 times, black pants, shoes that were slightly too big because Joe said he'd grow into them. His afro was neat, but unstyled. His face was serious. Ladies and gentlemen, the pastor announced, we have a very special performance tonight. Michael Jackson, age 6, will be singing His Eye is on the Sparrow. The room went completely silent. People knew this was Brandon's song. They knew what this meant. Michael walked to the front of the room. There was no stage, just a small space between the first row of folding chairs and the piano. Mrs. Porter sat at the piano, her hands trembling. Michael looked out at 200 faces staring at him, adults who expected him to break down, children who didn't understand why this was so important, his family sitting in the second row with tears already in their eyes. This song was my brother Brandon's favorite, Michael said, his 6-year-old voice quiet but steady. He's not here anymore, but when I sing it, I feel like he is. Mrs. Porter began playing, the slow, gentle introduction to His Eye is on the Sparrow. Michael opened his mouth, and what came out was impossible. The voice wasn't that of a 6-year-old child. It was pure, powerful, filled with an emotion that seemed to come from somewhere beyond his years. Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Every word was crystal clear. Every note was perfect. But more than technical precision, there was something else. Grief, hope, love, loss. All of it wrapped into 3 minutes of music. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. In the audience, people started crying, quietly at first, then openly. Mrs. Porter, playing the piano, was crying so hard she could barely see the keys, but her hands kept moving, muscle memory taking over. Catherine Jackson had both hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Joe Jackson, the man who never cried, had his head down, shoulders shaking. Michael's brothers sat frozen, watching their baby brother do something none of them could do. Carry their grief and somehow transform it into something beautiful. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. Michael's voice got stronger, more confident. He closed his eyes, and in that moment, he wasn't in a church basement. He was somewhere else, somewhere his brother could hear him. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. The final note hung in the air. Pure, perfect, heartbreaking. The room was silent for 3 full seconds. Then it erupted. But it wasn't applause, it was something else. Sobbing, weeping. 200 people releasing grief they'd been holding since Brandon died. For the Jackson family, for themselves, for every loss they'd ever experienced. Michael opened his eyes and saw the entire room crying. He didn't understand what he'd done. He just knew he'd sung Brandon's song. And somehow, that made things okay. The pastor stood up, tears running down his face. He tried to speak but couldn't. He just walked over to Michael and hugged him. Son, the pastor finally managed, that was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Your brother was here tonight. I promise you that. After the performance, people lined up to hug Michael, to thank him, to tell him how much it meant. But one woman stood in the back, watching, not crying. just watching with a small smile. Her name was Dorothy Ashford. She was Brandon's physical therapist. She'd worked with him 3 times a week for 2 years. She'd been in the car behind them the day of the accident. She'd seen everything. Dorothy had been carrying guilt for 4 months. Survivor's guilt. Why did I see it coming and couldn't stop it? Guilt. But watching Michael sing, something shifted in her. This child had taken tragedy and turned it into tribute, pain into purpose. Dorothy walked up to Katherine Jackson after the crowd dispersed. "Mrs. Jackson, may I speak with you?" "Of course, Dorothy. I want to do something for Michael, for your family. Brandon was special to me, and what Michael did tonight, I've never seen anything like it." "Dorothy, you don't need to. Please, let me." 2 weeks later, a package arrived at the Jackson house. Inside was a letter and a check. The letter read, "Mrs. Jackson, I've set up a music fund for Michael. $2,000 for voice lessons, piano lessons, whatever he needs. Brandon had a gift. Michael has it too. Let's honor Brandon by helping Michael share it with the world. With love, Dorothy Ashford." $2,000 in 1964 was nearly $20,000 in today's money. For a family like the Jacksons, it was life-changing. Katherine called Dorothy immediately. "Dorothy, this is too much. We can't accept." "You can, and you will, because Michael has something special, and Brandon would want him to use it." That $2,000 funded Michael's first real voice training. It paid for Joe to take the boys to better venues. It helped launch what would become the Jackson 5. But more than the money, Dorothy's gesture taught Michael something he'd carry his entire life. That music wasn't just entertainment. It was healing. It was connection. It was the way we keep people alive even after they're gone. Years later, in a 1979 interview, Michael was asked about his earliest memory of performing. "I was 6 years old," Michael said. "My brother Brandon had just died, and I sang his favorite song at a church talent show. I remember looking out at all those people crying, and I realized something. Music isn't about being perfect. It's about making people feel. It's about sharing something real." "What did you feel that night?" the interviewer asked. Michael paused. "I felt like Brandon was there, like he was singing through me. And I knew that as long as I kept singing, he'd never really be gone." In 1993, Michael established the Brandon Jackson Memorial Scholarship Fund. It provided music education for children with disabilities, children like Brandon, who had gifts the world needed to hear. Over 30 years, the fund helped over 5,000 children, music lessons, instruments, performance opportunities. The fund's motto, taken from Michael's words that night in the church basement, was simple. "When I sing, I'm not sick anymore. When I sing, I can do anything." Dorothy Ashford passed away in 2001. At her funeral, they played a recording from that December night in 1964. 6-year-old Michael Jackson singing, "His Eye is on the Sparrow." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Today, there's a small plaque at Mount Zion Baptist Church in Gary, Indiana. It's in the basement, right where Michael stood that night. It reads, December 12, 1964. Michael Jackson, age 6, sang "His Eye is on the Sparrow" in memory of his brother Brandon. That night, 200 people learned that grief, when shared, becomes bearable, and that music can heal what words cannot. The story of 6-year-old Michael singing his dead brother's song reminds us that tragedy doesn't have to be the end, that children are stronger than we give them credit for, and that sometimes the most powerful performances come not from talent, but from love. Michael Jackson went on to become the most famous entertainer in history, but he never forgot the performance that mattered most. A church basement, 200 people, and a song that kept his brother alive. If this incredible story of music, loss, and healing moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that love never really dies. It just changes form. Have you ever used music to work through grief? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more amazing true stories about the moments that change us forever.